Welcome one and all to another episode here on the Sitrep podcast. I am your host today, Oriskany Jim. And what we're going to be looking at today is a game of Valor and Victory. Oh my god, Valor and Victory. Yes, Valor and Victory. It's a great game, very popular game, and it always brings tons of views to our channel. So there you go. Specifically what we're going to be looking at is Valor and Victory Modern Expansion. This is sort of my small, humble contribution to the Valor and Victory ecosphere. Where you take that same World War II Valor and Victory squad-based infantry shootout kind of a scenario, you move it out of World War II and you bring it further forward into more recent decades. So we've done 1960s Vietnam, 1980s Falklands, Lebanon, 1990s Mogadishu, Gulf War, and into the 2000s with Fallujah and other scenarios even further forward into Afghanistan and other conflicts. So it's a great way to take an already great system and expand its utility out into more modern settings and have even more fun with it. So the scenario that we're going to be looking at today specifically takes place in Vietnam. Vietnam is kind of where Valor and Victory Modern Expansion got its start. So yes, we are going back to our stomping grounds here a little bit. This was a live game played with my friend Dylan in Australia about a week ago. And the original intent was to record the highlights, sort of paste it together, edit it together, and present a 1 or 2 part video for you guys. The problem is we had a little bit of an audio issue, we had a little bit of a connection issue. I mean, nothing really terrible, but enough to kind of screw things up. Far more importantly, I recorded way too much footage, like 2 hours and 15 minutes. I can't turn that into a 20-minute video, 25-minute video for you guys to enjoy. That just wasn't going to work. So I thought it better to just start off with a clean slate, shoot a new video where I just kind of review the highlights of the game. The good news is I still have all that raw footage, so when a really critical part of the game pops up, I'm still going to be able to sort of insert that little bit of actual live gameplay into the recording. I hope you guys, like that. But yeah, Valor and Victory Vietnam, here we go. So like I said, today's scenario involves the Australians, and we're going to be putting them up against their primary enemy in the Vietnam War, the NLF, or more commonly known as the Viet Cong. So we see here on our map, this small circle here in the southern part of the map. This generally indicates the approximate location of the Phuoc Toi province. Hopefully I'm coming even close to saying that right, probably not. And this was the primary area of operations for ATF, or 1st Australian Task Force. The Australian Task Force, or the Australian commitment into the Vietnamese conflict, wasn't the biggest, and they didn't range through a huge part of the country. Nevertheless, they made a very, very important contribution in this, at least in this small southern area that we're looking at today. Here we see a slightly more detailed view of the province in question. We've all heard about or seen the movie about the battle at the Long Tan fire base, so we see that location on the map. We see Noi Dat, that seems to be where 1st ATF main base actually was, and we see all the rubber plantations spread throughout the area. Now, if we look northwest off the map, we look at areas like Binh Hoa, and further north, of course the map doesn't show it, but further north than that, you would see areas like Long Binh, Tan Son Nhut Airport, the northern sort of suburbs and environs of Saigon, where the Americans had obviously a huge force. So the Tet Offensive in 1968, those areas came under immense amount of pressure from the NLF or the Viet Cong. This includes 2nd Field Force headquarters at places like Long Binh, and Binh Hoa was hit also very, very hard. And as we know, the Tet Offensive didn't go that well for the communist forces, especially in this part of the country. And as they were pulling out, when they realized they'd been beaten, as they started to pull out, they found some of their eastward escape paths blocked by forces of Australians that had ventured out of this Phuoc Toi area of operations that they usually kept themselves more or less confined to. So the Viet Cong has been badly beaten. They're running for their lives. Overwhelming American forces are right behind them. And the only thing blocking their last way out are Australian patrols and forward deployment forces. Needless to say, these forces were hit by the Viet Cong very, very hard. Nobody fights harder than a wounded, trapped animal. So, yeah, some of the fighting in the late spring and early summer of 1968 in these areas got very, very intense. And this is a little bit of what we're going to be looking at in today's scenario. Okay, here we are looking at the map for today's game. Looks pretty typical for Vietnamese coastal lowlands. not terribly well developed at this time, but we have plenty of dense jungle vegetation, hooches, rice paddies, a lot of trails, not a lot of elevation. This is pretty flat terrain. Nevertheless, here we are. So we see some civilians. Valor Victory Modern Expansion does bring civilians into the game, depending on the scenario. What we also see are no infantry units. There's actually no combat units on either side on the table. Instead, what we have are these lettered tiles, or these lettered counters. So on the NLF, National Liberation Front, or Viet Cong side, we have 10 lettered tiles with no indication of what the hell they are. Well, we don't know what they are, or I should say the Australian player, my opponent, Dylan, doesn't know what they are. I know that 5 of those tiles represent real units. 5 of them are complete dummies. He doesn't know which ones are real, and he doesn't know how they're stacked together until they contact them. And they can either contact them when I open fire, when he moves adjacent to one of my stacks, or if he can spot them given certain spotting rules that we've added to the game. The Australians are kind of the same way, as you can tell. Notice they only have 8 tiles on the map. That's because they only have 4 stacks. So again, however many stacks you have that many stacks again as dummy units. And you maneuver those units just like you would real units. You got to be careful with them, and you got to play them smart, because if you start moving them in weird ways, or you're not very careful about how you conceal which ones are real and which ones aren't, your opponent's going to clue in pretty damn quick to which ones are real and which ones aren't. It does make the game feel a lot more like Vietnam, though. You never really know where the enemy is. And if you move towards an enemy, or what you thought was an enemy, and then it turns out to be a dummy unit, you're like, oh, it was a water buffalo moving through the brush, it was some birds, it was some civilians, who knows what it was. It wasn't the enemy. And now you've just kind of given away your own position by charging through the jungle, bayonets fixed, and making a whole lot of noise, startling a bunch of birds, and kind of giving away your position, and turns out there was nothing there. And you could have also hit a booby trap. We have rules for that too. So yeah, movement it's a lot of slow, careful, very, very meticulous, like tiptoeing through a minefield kind of movement. By the way, this is another reason why this turned into a 2.5-hour video that was way too boring to just kind of post raw on the channel for you guys. I don't think you guys would have enjoyed it very much. It's one thing to be in a game like this where every step could be your last. You never really know where your enemy is, and not the most fun to watch on camera. So we're going to spare you guys that and get into the movement of turn 1. Actually, before we get into the movement of turn 1, just in case anybody is interested, here are the units and counters that are going to be involved in today's game. So we're going to start with the National Liberation Front, Viet Cong. We see here their combat values, their special weapons. They've got some PKs, they've got some RPGs. I'm not going to go into the math I used to come up with the values for these. Veteran players of Valor and Victory are going to look at some of these numbers and they're going to say, holy crap, these are kind of high. There is a logic to it. If you're interested, there will be a link to our Discord in the description of this video. Reach out to us on that Discord. Valor and Victory Modern Expansion is free. And in the designer's notes, I do put in the math and the sort of reverse engineering that was put into how these values were arrived at. I should also say real quick that before I published Valor and Victory Modern Expansion, not only on our Discord, but also on Board Game Geek, I did reach out to Barry Doyle. I showed him what I had, and yeah, got the thumbs up. So I'm not going to say that this is like official Valor and Victory product, because, I mean, let's face it, it's not. But at the same time, there is a method to the madness of these values. They do seem pretty high. And if you think these values are high, wait till I show you the Australians. They're even better. Because obviously they are elite forces. Even though they're carrying the same automatic rifles, semi-automatic rifles, light machine guns, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, and these kinds of things that send the firepower values through the roof. Also, the way squads are put together. Again, I promise I wouldn't get into the math. In the designer's notes of Valor and Victory Modern Expansion, you'll see how I got here. Hopefully you agree. You'll also notice that both sides have grenades and snipers. Both sides have a satchel charge. The Australians have casualty markers. So when First World Forces, or government forces, regular army forces in Valor and Victory Modern Expansion suffer a casualty step, in other words, a half squad gets knocked out, a leader gets knocked out, or when a full squad gets knocked down to a half squad, you don't just take them off the table. It's not like World War II Valor and Victory. You have to replace that with a casualty marker. That casualty marker has to be evac'd. There's a couple ways to do that. Your normal troops can do that. They do have first aid training. The First World Forces or regular Army forces do have medics. And those medics have special rules where they can evacuate POWs, wounded civilian counters, or wounded friendly counters even easier. And that really reduces the victory point impact to your side if you're able to successfully dust off your casualties and get them home. Meanwhile, back over here on the VVME side, they don't have casualty markers because they didn't really care about their casualties all the time. However, there are POWs. POWs are a special mechanic brought into Valor Victory Modern Expansion for the irregular side. Not necessarily Second World or Third World, that doesn't matter. What really matters is it's the regular versus the irregular forces. When it comes to the irregular side, that could be, insurgents in Fallujah all the way back to the Viet Cong in Vietnam or anywhere in between. The insurgent forces have to track POWs. And anytime insurgent forces are eliminated via a successful assault, they produce POW counters. And POW counters, if successfully evacuated by the Free World side or by the regular Army side, are worth double victory points, because body count is a big thing in Vietnam, but what matters even more is getting some of these sumbitches duct taped to a chair back at battalion headquarters to answer some questions. Alrighty, here we are with movement at the end of turn 1. I moved first. I'm playing the Communists, the National Liberation Front or the Viet Cong, whichever you prefer. And we're coming in from anywhere within 5 hexes of the northwest corner of the table. Again, these are those major NLF forces trying to pull back from their defeats at the hand of major American forces, 2nd Field Force headquarters, at places like Tan Son Nhut, Bien Hoa, and Long Binh, places like that. So we're looking for a way out. This company, this probably from a NLF main battalion, this is a company that's sort of sent forward to kind of feel a way through the jungle here, hopefully identify an escape route the hell out of here. We're just trying to disengage, honestly. And of course, the Australians are moving into block us. So my Australian player, Dylan, is obviously playing the Australian forces. Surprise, surprise. He's coming in second, and he comes in from anywhere within 5 hexes of the southeast corner of the table. So both forces are sort of moving through the jungle here. Again, neither side is moving very, very quickly. I should say each real stack of forces does have at least one leader with them, so we all have a movement rate of 6 per, Barry's standard Valor Victory rules. However, neither side wants to be the first to show an actual unit. Victory is probably going to go to he who stays hidden the longest. Whoever gets spotted first as a real unit is probably going to get the hell kicked out of them, and it's definitely going to start off the game with a huge disadvantage. Let's just put it that way. Because the firepower, I showed you guys the combat values. The firepower in this game is off the scale. We do have civilians on the table, so how do civilians work? Well, civilians are brought into Valor Victory Modern Expansion. They are a very, very asymmetrical part of the game, like pretty much everything in Valor Victory Modern Expansion. As the NLF player, for instance, I'm allowed to stack with civilians and use them as cover. So once I stack real units with civilians, he's not allowed to shoot into that stack because he can't risk hitting civilians. I can stack with civilians and shoot out of that hex to my heart's content, because I can basically use them as human shields and so on. I also have booby traps on the table. He doesn't. He has to evacuate his casualties. I don't. Victory conditions are heavily slanted against the Australians. But again, he gets elite Australian units. He gets much better support weapons. He gets helicopter gun strikes. He gets off-board mortars. He gets 1968 firepower against me, which is basically, I have some SKS rifles, a couple of AKMs, and if I'm lucky, I RPG or an RPK or something like that. Again, it's asymmetrical gaming, and that's what Valor Victory Modern Expansion is all about. Alright, here we are at the end of turn 2, and things have finally started to happen. The Australians are still moving forward very, very carefully. You'll notice that they're staying under cover pretty much wherever they can. You'll notice also where some of them are using the assault move rule. They've got the little red assault move counter That's per Valor and Victory, the original Barry Doyle Valor and Victory rules. Why is he using assault move when we haven't even spotted each other yet, much less started shooting at each other yet? Well, because this scenario includes booby traps, which I included in my Valor and Victory Modern Expansion. So, per the scenario may or may not designate that the insurgent side in a given Valor and Victory Modern Expansion scenario will get booby traps. In this case, they definitely do. So the Viet Cong doesn't have to worry about booby traps. They're my booby traps. My troops put them there. They know where they are. They don't risk hitting their own booby traps. However, the Australians don't know where the booby traps are. So whenever they move a stack, they have to roll 2d6. And on an 11 or 12 result, boom, they hit a booby trap. They've just lost a unit's worth of casualty points. Whether that's a leader, a medic team, or a half squad, whatever the case may be, depending on what he selects. It's got to be someone in that stack, obviously. They just lost a casualty. That means he's got to evacuate. That means he's got to call and dust off. And he may have given away his position because somebody's yelling and screaming in the jungle. He just stepped on a punchy stick or something like that. So if you use the assault move rule, that probability of hitting a booby trap is reduced drastically. Now only boxcars, only a natural 12 on 2d6 indicates that particular stack hit a booby trap. And I should also say that you cannot hit a booby trap in the advance and assault phase because you're only moving one hex. Basically, the slower you're moving, the easier it is to avoid stepping into a booby trap. Okay guys, here we are at the end of turn 3, and whoa, things have kicked off in a big way. Hey, remember we thought Kong might be out here banging around in the brush? Well, Sarge, don't look now, but I think we found him. Yeah, sure enough, the Australians found me before I found them, unfortunately. Okay, meanwhile, down here, I've got 2 potential units. He's got 1 potential unit. We do sort of see each other, at least through the rice paddies. Rice paddies do add +1 hindrance. Alright, so I'll see if A can spot your C. Yes. Is C a real unit or not?
Unfortunately, C is also not real.
C is not real. No! That means that booby trap did nothing. Now, even though C isn't real, folks, because it's all simultaneous, C does get a chance to spot either Alpha or Delta.
Alpha.
Okay, normally it's a 7 or less because you're elite. Rice paddies make it a 6 or less.
Yeah. A 2.
A 2. Alpha is a real unit.
Yeah.
It is my commander. So what happened there, we still don't know about D, so I'm going to leave that one alone. So what happened there was, as these guys were creeping through the jungle, they thought they saw something here in India 9. And one of these yahoos leaned out of the tree line a little too much to see if there was a real threat there in Hex India 9. And when he did that, somebody in the Australian force spotted him. So that's bad news for me. You now actually have some targets on the table. Meanwhile, as you guys can see here on the map, there are no actual Australian units on the table. This is a bit of a shoe on the other foot situation where the Viet Cong has been spotted and the Allies have not. So what winds up happening is actually kind of complicated. He spotted me, although he spotted me with what turned out to be a dummy unit. No worries. I finish up my movement phase and we're good to go. Then we go to Australian turn 3. He now has a designated target. He knows where some actual confirmed NLF/Viet Cong forces actually are. He starts to come at me with what will turn out to be, of course I don't know this at the time, real units. So we'll go past your command phase, your fire phase, we go straight to your movement phase.
Yes.
This is from last turn, okay. Alright, cool. So whichever unit you wanted to move first.
Let's move unit G. Yep, so I9, H8, G9. So hugging that sort of trees.
Okay,
finish
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, my G or my D can definitely see that. Definitely. My spotted guys can see that because there's no trees in the 11. So I'll roll for my real guys first to see if they see that. 3, Mr. Camera here. Hell no, he doesn't see shit. And then we'll go for the Delta counter. Okay, Delta counter saw that with Snake Eyes. So is G a real unit?
Yes, G is 4th platoon.
Aha! Okay, we now have some legit targets as well. But during his movement phase, the Viet Cong gets, of course, what's called opportunity fire. Well, when you're using double blind rules, spotting checks can be done during the opportunity fire phase. It's a good time to spot the enemy as he's moving through the brush. Turns out I spot some of his forces. Now, the units that I spot him with, their spotting check was their attack. So those exact units are no longer able to attack him. Okay, so since we have a target spotted, this group here has already tried his spotting check and failed, so he will not get a shot. D would get a shot for opportunity fire if he's real. B would get a shot at opportunity fire if he's real. However, they kind of whisper to their buddies to the left and to the right. Spoiler alert, a whole lot of those units down there are real units for the Viet Cong. And now that I have an actual real unit, one of my units gets lucky and spots his real units as he's moving in towards my real units. Long story short, we finally come to grips with each other. Here's the good news and the bad news. They are both real.
Yeah,
D and, okay, yeah, we pretty much sussed each other out here. Alright, so that's going to be opportunity fire, -1, -1, +2 for your trees. Yeah, holy crap, 29 points in there. Modified +1 to the die roll. So let me get our copy of our little chart here to save us some scrolling time. I drop in RPGs on them. Turns out they don't do very much. More RPGs, PKMs, RPDs, all kinds of light and medium machine guns. All right, I am on the yellow row, barely, 29. Subtracting 1, adding 2. So it becomes a grand total of, +1. This would be a good time to roll very, very high for the Australians. So here we go. A 10. Okay, so 10 becomes a net 11. And the yellow row, even with all that firepower, missed. You guys can see there.
Nice.
Yeah, so you got lucky on that one. The bad news is there's another one with all the exact same stuff coming at you. Same stuff? Yep, including RPGs. That's why the firepower is so high. 2 teams with RPGs are hissing into that tree line across those rice paddies. So, again, on the yellow row, let's see if he gets lucky again. Damn, 2 really bad rolls. So that 9, again, is read as a 10 because of all the net modifiers. I did finally do 1 casualty point. So, 1 casualty point. And
Cool.
however you want to assess it.
Pin a half squad is normally the best way to...
Ting. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and take opportunity for the rest of my defensive fire. 6 and 6 makes 12 total is what I meant to say. I do have to subtract 2. I'm sorry, I get to add 2 for Woods. I subtract 2 for my commander. Alright, so I have a grand total of 12 points, no net modifiers. I'm on the gray row, and I'm going to roll some dice. Now's the time to finally get lucky. 7 stays at a 7. That is 2 casualty points. I finally get lucky with a little bit of mortar fire, as you'll see in the clip coming up. And I wind up pinning down a huge... I pretty much pinned down that entire platoon against... who's that? Lieutenant Simpson's stack there.
Pin both squads, yeah.
You better hope you rally these guys.
Yes, yeah, I'm going to need to rally them.
Ooh, you have a really good number, but wow, you really need to rally. See, if you don't, NVA turn 4, or so Viet Cong turn 4 is going to be delightful. Which is bad news for the Australians because again, this is technically the Australian turn. So the Australians got pinned down during their own movement phase. If they don't rally at the end of their movement phase, we go immediately into Viet Cong turn 4, where I will move, I will assault, and that's going to be it. Yeah, an entire platoon of Australians is going to be not only destroyed, eliminated as combat units in the game, but also captured, which means I get double victory points. These are going to be 30 guys, either bayoneted, shot, or taken back to Viet Cong tunnel somewhere where good things are not in their future. So it's really all going to come down to how those rally checks take place at the end of the turn. You've got to rally them. All right, they rally on a 7 because they're elites. However, they are with an unpinned -1 officer. They rally on an 8 or less. So
Yes.
it's time to rally.
Okay, first.
Yep.
The full squad.
Yep.
A 4.
Okay, they rally. Because guys, on the audience, if he doesn't rally, he's going to get assaulted, and that's literally just cue adagio for strings because they're all dead. Game's over. Okay, second squad.
An 8.
Ooh, barely. Thank you, officer. It's almost like military command is important. Half squad.
A 5.
All right, the entire stack rally. Mr. Simpson, your guys must like you or something because you just saved all their lives just by the power of military leadership. I mean, I might still assault him just to be fun, but now he's going to get full opportunity fire, a full assault, and a full assault resistance. You know, he gets to go on the actual table, and we're going to go ahead and dice that out. But yeah, suffice it to say, if I do assault that, because it's still pretty exposed, unless A is a real unit, which he probably is. Everybody else is too far north, and E is going to be blocked by the woods in Gulf 11. So I might still assault. It's just going to be a hell of a bloody business. And since we're playing on stream to have an exciting episode, spoiler alert, Oriskany is going to go ahead and assault across the rice paddy. Because it's only Viet Cong, who cares? Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and start turn 4 and see where we wind up. Alright guys, so there you have it. We're now exactly halfway through the game. We've completed 3 turns out of 6. Turn 4 is going to be bloody, I can tell you that for now. I was looking forward to a great assault right over all those Australians. Unfortunately for me, Dylan has, by some miracle, rallied Simpson's entire platoon out from under my Viet Cong mortar fire. So there's going to be a blitz across that rice paddy, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks very much, guys, for watching this video. Tango Mike, as always, we are rounds complete. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. In the meantime, stay tuned next week to see how this game wraps up. We'll be in touch very soon. Take care, everybody, and thanks again.